we have the war against Midian, right? Matos and Maasei, at least in the annual cycle. Why is it? This is one of the reasons why you should be using the triennial cycle. The problem is the triennial cycle. We need communities doing it. Triennial cycle. What's the main advantage of the triennial cycle? You actually could learn the parsha. The disadvantage on the flip side of the annual cycle is you get a parsha like Matos-Maasei or Vayakal Pekudei. Matos-Maasei is a monster. Okay, so it said, why do we even have such a thing? Oh, because 3 weeks they want to read Devarim right before Tisha B'av. Basically, we're forcing it, and then we have all the short parshas at the end. Okay? It's a little bit lopsided. Matos-Maasei. So let's point out something here. The war with Midian teaches that revenge is desired, right? And also, by the way, connecting this to the beginning of what we were saying, it says, "Vayitzbu Midian kasher tzivah Hashem Moshe." They massed against Midian as God commanded Moses. The Sifrei, brought by the Rambam, says they kept the halacha of attacking on 3 sides, but leaving the 4th side open for those who might want to just flee, not retreat, flee. Okay, that's what we learned there. And also says Vayahar Gufol Zafar. Why? Because even when fighting Midian, they had this whole wipe out Am Yisrael type of thing. They used whatever they could. Okay, they realized they couldn't use war, so they tried to use supernatural powers and then trying to get us to sin, get God against us. They really had it in for us, and they're basically, I guess, standing for Amalek then, right? No, you still only had to kill the males, only the males, and they took the women and children as captive. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, "Hora'at sha'ah." In this case, you have to kill all the women who are old enough to have known a man, right? Because they.
Then why is they pass them in front of the seats to check the.
Yeah, sometimes before Bat Mitzvah, yeah, the Rashi's bringing a medrash. That whole thing of passing them in front of the seats is a medrash that might not be historical. Shot is a certain age, okay? Women capable of relations. So the point was that they took all the male, they killed the male suppressed as slaves, and let's open the 3rd side. And this whole thing, probably no Yifas Torah also, because Moshe Rabbeinu said you shouldn't have left the women alive in this particular case. Mashma, that in other cases, you are supposed to keep the women alive. By the way, that's why I said Pshat in the Gemara over there is not like Rashi, because of course, when Yoav was bringing back captives, he's supposed to bring back some women captives. Okay, the David's challenge was, why did it take you so long? And Yoav said, it's because I was focusing on killing the men, and I went out of my way not to kill the women. No, you shouldn't have cared. Okay, fine. We mentioned that earlier. So that's what we learned. And also, you're supposed to take spoils for them. Next, V'im lo sarishu is in this week's parsha, right? V'im lo sarishu it's Yoshavei Aretz B'Pnechem. If you don't get rid of the people who are there, he doesn't mention Kananim explicitly, they're going to cause you trouble. That's what we suffered from every single day. By the way, there are people calling for this. It's now critical. We all know that there's a war going on around here. Terror attacks on the roads and everything like that, and also marches in the cities. We have so many Amalekites among us, cities full of Amalekites that we need to destroy. And they're not going to do it. I think that I call upon everybody in Sahel to, if they want, leave your posts and I'll become your commander. I'll tell you what to do. I'll give you permission to use your arms against your enemies in any which way that works. What do you think? What do you think of this proposal? Tell all the members of Sahel that I'll just let them do whatever they want, and come and help us destroy our enemies within, because now it's critical. Either way, that's in this week's parsha. And then the next one is the reason for Ir Mikla. What does it say at the end of Ir Mikla? This is an amazing pasuk over here. We're going to put on what Rav Kasher brings here. Rav Kasher is a Torah Shlema. He points out a few things, but he himself doesn't add his own agenda here. He just has selections and thorough selections from whom? He has it from, by the way, here's the Yerushalmi. I mentioned this before. I highlighted here, where Yoav and King David over here. Yeah. Here's where it talks about the time taken off from David Melech's kingdom, okay, because of this war taking too long. Okay. So there you go. That was that source. What does it say? It says regarding Bnei Noah. Okay. It says Shofech dam ha'adam, ba'adam damo yishafech. Okay. People who spill blood, one who spills the blood of man, by man shall his blood be spilled. Chazal teach us that is the rule that among mankind, Bnei Noah, murderers are to be punished with death. That's the proper way. Now, when you have here, sometimes we can't find the murderer. Jews are given the specific commandment of Egla Arutha. Okay? What is an Egla Arutha? Find someone who's been murdered in the middle of nowhere. You don't know who did it. You don't know who did it. So what do? The Torah prescribes that we take this calf and we basically kill it by breaking its neck from the behind, like a Bechor Hamor that has not been redeemed. Just destroy it. And it has to be at the Nachal Eson. You know what I'm talking about, the mitzvah. Egla Arufa. It's a big deal. And the sages have to come out, the Sanhedrin has to come out and measure which city is the closest. And then the kingdom of that city have to come out and do this ritual with the Kohanim. And it says, V'nikaper lahem adam. This achieves a form of atonement, a suspended atonement. Okay? Now, that's something special for the Jewish people. Now, why do we do this in the temple? If this is a form of atonement, wow, we're going to kill a calf that's going to achieve, it's basically like an asham tagli, suspended atonement. The guy doesn't even know if he deserves to bring a chatas. Chatas is, he knows he sinned, but he was shogeg when he did it. Asham tagli is for when he was shogeg, but he doesn't even know if he actually did the sin. But he wants to rest his conscience, at least before Yom Kippur happens. So what does he do? He brings an asham tagli, right? Suspended atonement. The Egla Rufa achieves suspended atonement because we don't know who the murderer was. So why do we do this in the temple if it's a form of atonement? So the Rambam says in the V'or Nevuchim that it makes a big to-do and actually generates more interest in the case and maybe some more information, testimony, something, someone saw something will come to light. Okay, fine. And when we talk about the Miklat, it says regarding unintentional murders who killed by shogeg, you have to send them to Miklat. And eventually, by the way, if you have someone who's actually guilty, you have to bring him to court and kill him. What does Moshe Rabbeinu tell us? We read over here at the end of Parshat Matot-Maasei. Okay. First of all, don't take kofar. We mentioned before, don't take kofar, don't receive kofar. Why not? Don't bribe. Okay, shochad is a form of shochad. We pointed out before because it's a horror of the judges to want to do such a thing. Anybody would want to take kofar or to get off of a murder rap or the death penalty. The chiddush of lo sikhu kofar is the judges shouldn't have a yitzhar and say, well, we're the judges, we could actually decide this type of stuff. We talked about that a few weeks ago. V'lo sachanifu es. What does tachanifu mean? Rashi points out, like Onkelos, don't let the land, that means people land, be guilty of anything. Don't let them have guilt sitting on their head like an albatross, like they say. Why? The fact that someone was killed in Eretz Yisrael, that's what makes everybody liable. We're all communally liable for the fact that a murder happened. The land, there's the people of the land, will achieve no atonement for the blood that is spilled therein, unless we have the blood of the one who richly spilled it. Shofecho means shofech shalom. Okay? Similar to what Bnei Noach have. Bnei Noach have a commandment that if there's a murderer, he is to be put to death. That's proper. That's justice. Perhaps that's even kapara. Is that kapara? We'll get to that in a second. The Jewish people are told also, really, the true atonement for murder within the land is find the one who spilled the blood, the murderer, and put him to death. He will have to pay with his life. All right? That's why we have this Miklat idea to separate between those who are shogegim and mezidim. Mezidim are to be put to death. A shogeg needs a form of kapara. What's his kapara? He sits in galus for a while until the Kohen Gadol dies, and then he has achieved kapara. So I have a list over here, an important distinction between Bnei Noach and Bnei Yisrael. There's a lot of halachas. You have to know what halacha applies to Jews and what halacha applies to non-Jews. For Bnei Yisrael, we have many different forms of kapara. The first is the different misos. There are different ways to base and put someone to death. Why is that the case that you have to kill someone with chenek and not sreifa, and not the sayiv, and not skila? Why are the different gradations? Why some just get malchus? Some need a different form of kapara. There's mida keneged mida. Okay, there's different levels. The worst gets skila, right, and sreifa, and then there's harag and chenek. Chenek is for the lesser sins, right, so to speak. They're all death penalty. There's different things. Then there's lashes. There's an asham. There's an asham talui. There's a chatas. There's Yom Kippur, right? Yom Kippur atones for certain things. They're suspended. Someone's asking a question. Yeah, I don't know. Well, why are there some murderers Ishmaelite ones and others who are alive. I know that you have to put them to death. By the way, anybody who's committed murder or has killed a Jew is to be put to death. Let's go back to this. What are the lists? Yom Kippur itself, the day of Yom Kippur itself atones for many sins, certain types, right? The scapegoat, that's a Seir Lazazel. Fasting, Yisurim, right? These are all things that the Torah prescribes that we do. And this Eglah Rufa. There's so many different forms of kapara for different things that are prescribed, right? Most of them in the Beis Hamikdash, so I just gave a list. You have to atone for the sin. The Torah says, particular sin, this is the prescription. This is what makes things right. But for Goyim, what kaparas do we have for Goyim? We just have justice, okay? One form of death is prescribed throughout the Torah. Whatever the Gentiles sinned, whether it's murder, or robbery, right? All the same. Sayed. One form of death for all Goyim. And burial. Burial is a universal form of kapara. Everybody has to get the burial. That's a form of kapara. That's universal. Even the worst Gentiles put to death are to be buried properly, right? Based on as a special base kavura of those who it puts to death, right? And the Navi talks about those who killed in battle, they're put to death. Goyim don't even have the ability, according to halacha, to bring chatas and asham, right? We saw they can't even bring shlamim. What does the halacha say about Goyish sacrifice? Within our temple, they could bring burnt offerings. And at their own bamas that they build outside the temple, according to halacha, only burnt offerings, olot. That's it. They don't have any other form of kapara. Someone said that there was a question there. Yeah, that's the important part. Jewish people have all these different forms of kapara. The Goyim do not. God gave us a gift. So for Goyim, it's like I said, mostly justice. The kapara for the Gentile community is they know a murder happened. What do they got to do? Let's say it was a shogeg. For Jews, the kapara for a shogeg, a murder by shogeg, is ir miklat. We saw before Goyim have no such concept. The Goel Hadam has to put the guy to death, maybe, but he doesn't have a miklat. He doesn't have base where he can say his entire life he has to watch out that maybe the guy's relative is going to come and kill him, right? The only kapara that they have is when justice is meted out, when the murderer is put to death. And sometimes they have a burnt offering, whatever that can atone for. For us, what does a burnt offering atone for, by the way? Remember we saw this in the Rambam? No, a burnt offering atones for bitul aseh, like you're pointing out. Bitul aseh, an olah atones for not doing a positive commandment. But for sinning, you have, chatas and asham and the rest of them, or lashes, whatever it may be. So the Jewish people were given a special commandment here and elsewhere that sometimes the Eglah Rufa is there for an unknown murderer. If the Goyim have such a thing, no, they can't bring an Eglah Rufa. They have no such concept. They have no such mitzvah. It won't help them. They have to find the murderer. Yet the Jewish people all understand, go find the murderer, because the only real atonement that if someone actually knows who did this, the only real atonement will be what? If you put him to death. So we're going to put here what Rav Kasher has. The Gemara in, let me say, I have to stop the share and I have to put this on the screen so I myself can see this. We'll close with this before we go back and see the other thing. This Gemara increases, by the way.
Connection between Eglah and the scapegoat, how they're both not.
Yes, yes, that's what we're bringing up. I mentioned it on the list. Certain sins, for whatever reason, because they're not known. The Kohen Gadol, when he confesses all of Am Yisrael's sins on that goat, does he know what every person in Am Yisrael did? So how can that be a confession? In what form is that? God, we've all sinned. I don't know. Chatanu, Avinu, Pashanu, and it's all on the goat. How can the Kohen Gadol? No one. We don't even have this idea that you're supposed to go. The Catholics, Lahavdil, have this idea that you have to go to the priest and recite your sins. You have to confess to the priest. A man has to hear it. We think that's kfira. You're not supposed to tell your sins between you and God. You're not supposed to go to the priest or the rabbi or whoever and confess. You're only supposed to confess to God straight up. Okay? Straight to God. No intermediaries. So how is it that the Kohen Gadol, when he recites his confession on the scapegoat, is able to confess your sins? Did you go and give the Kohen Gadol a list? Obviously not. He has only a few minutes to say this confession. Somehow, but the Kohen Gadol basically is unaware. He knows that we have sinned. Doesn't know who sinned. He doesn't know this specific sin. So too, the Eglah Rufa atones for. The fact is that lo noda mihi kahu. It is not known passively, passively, who smote this fellow, who was the murderer. The murderer knows. No one else knows. So the Zakanim have to recite a confession, so to speak, a confession on this egla before, and they have to do a smicha on it. They're very much the same, and they're both sent to, the scapegoat's sent out to the wilderness, a place, Eretz Gezerah, and they thrown off a cliff, and the egla rufa is brought to a similar place, not thrown off the cliff. Instead, he's actively killed. Okay, but they're very similar. Yes, they atone for the unknown, and that's the connection here in the Gemara increases. And there's a paraduma also atones, but in a different way. It's a purification atonement. Okay.
They're all three animals that are not exactly Polvanot. They are all similar to Polvanot.
In that they
not better than the jump.
Yes. So you see and they say so the Chazal were struggling. In what way does the paraduma atone for something? It atones for Cheda Ega. I'll read you what the Gemara says here in Krisus. He shortened it because the Gemara brings this up. The Mishnah talks about the Mishnah says person who was already obligated to bring a chatas or an asham for whatever reason. He knows he violated Shabbos b'shogeg, so he has to bring this korban, right? So Yom Kippur passed. You say, well, Yom Kippur passed, it's already been atoned. No, you still are obligated to bring that animal as a korban. Okay? The chayvi asham was tuliyim keturin. But if a person had asham talui on his hands, he had an obligation to bring asham talui. Yom Kippur passed. Yom Kippur covered it. Isn't that great? He didn't dedicate an animal to this. He knew that he has to bring an asham talui. Yom Kippur happened. That got atonement for him. That's pretty good. Yom Kippur is pretty high level. Like Rabbi Soloveitchik has an essay about this. His father told him this very day, the sunset of Yom Kippur will atone for your sins, certain types of sins, as long as you confess them properly. Gemara, chayav yasham tuluyin, benani mili. How do they know this particular case? A person had to bring an asham talui. Yom Kippur happened. He's off the hook. Chatas, a regular asham, he's not off the hook. Amar Rabbi Lezer Makrabi kol chatosechem lifnei Hashem. From all your sins in front of God. Chait, no, she'ein makirbo, okay, or as he says in parentheses, shalom noda lo shechata. A chait that he doesn't really know. Did I sin or not? Did it really happen? It's unknown. Ela makom. Only God knows about it, because God knows everything. Yom HaKippur b'chaper. So Yom Kippurim covers that. That atones for the type of thing you'd bring an Asham Talui.
So what's the point of having a Asham Talui?
For the rest of the year, they told people, there are people who used to bring Ashamos just in case. So they told them, at least wait until post Yom Kippur so that you had a chance to sin, because if you want to bring it the first thing after Yom Kippur, it's impossible. You didn't have a chance to sin. Okay? There were tzaddikim at the time. Bava ben Buta, the same one who told Herod, if you want to atone for your lifelong sins and all the bloodshed and everything and damage to Am Yisrael as its king, fix the base of Mikdash, right? Same Bava ben Buta used to have this minhag. Okay, Elamiata say here's this question: Egla Rufa Shavar Le Yom Kippurim. Okay, if the town had to bring an Egla Rufa, which is a suspended form of atonement, right? They had an Egla Rufa on their hands, but Yom Kippur came. Maybe they low mighty the haki parallel. He brings in the Rashi words. The Egla Rufa problem, the sin for which it came, should have been atoned for Yom Kippur. It was unknown. Amar Abaye horeg bakir. Abaye says, yeah, but the murderer himself knows. It has to be unknown to everybody, not just generally unknown, but only known to God. It has to be a type of sin that no one knows. That Yom Kippur will atone for. With the Egla Rufa, unfortunately, there is someone who knows. That's what Abaye says. Rava says, Amar Kra, or Rava Amar Kra, Vila Aretz Lo Yuchu Parla Dama Sher Shupachta. The pasuk from this week's parsha. The land, or the people of the land, will only achieve atonement for the blood that was spilled there through the blood of the person who did it. Ein l'chashum kapara elazo. Egla Rufa al Safek, Mariga Sahoreg al Avadai. Okay? Egla Rufa itself is only a Safek. We don't know who did it. But the Hariga Sahoreg, the kapara of killing the murderers, that's a Vadai kapara, that's necessary. That's Rava. Rava disagrees with the Baye. Rava is saying, technically speaking, maybe you don't have to bring the Egla Rufa after Yom Kippur. But you're only going to achieve kapara anyways. Normally, when we say Yom Kippur got you off the book, because Yom Kippur did the kapara. But Egla Rufa itself is not even a real kapara. It's not a full kapara. Yom Kippur could technically override Egla Rufa. But even then it won't help. Because the only real kapara for a murder is the murderer being put to death. All those murderers should be put to death. And that's why our problem, because it says here, the worst sin that we have in our hands right now is, well, there's two sins. Allowing those who intend to murder us to persist in the land of Israel, that's at the beginning. Allowing them to persist, God will allow them to kill us because he wants us to get rid of them. And if we don't get rid of them, God will get rid of us. That's what the pasuk says. And on the other hand, those who've already killed Jews, those murderers who've already done what they did, they have to be put to death according to this week's parsha. And it's against us. It's to our discredit if we allow them to continue living. The only true atonement is by killing them. So this week's parsha tells us how to deal with all the potential murderers and all the murderers in practice. Those who have murdered and those who intend to murder. Both need to be destroyed. Otherwise, we're in trouble. I wish we could end on a happy note. We live to see the destruction of all of Israel's enemies and the enactment. We should put the Torah into practice speedily soon. Shalom and Yitzchon. Have a good Shabbos. Any questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Would a non-Jew be able to get kapara for not setting up Batei Mishpat because it's a bitul aseh? So he could bring in an olah for that. Would that work?
No, I don't think that it works necessarily because a guy is chayav misa for such a thing. A guy is chayav misa. It's not a bitul aseh. It's like letting him get away with it. It's for a Jew. An olah is a bitul aseh. An olah atones for a bitul aseh. Guy don't really have an aseh except for this court thing. They can't say, well, we don't have courts, so let's bring a lot of burnt offerings off the hook. No, the courts are the most important part. They're the ones who enforce the rest of this. They have no way around it. Yeah, we should educate the Gentiles also who want to know these things, how to keep God's Torah. See you all later. Be good.
We would like to encourage our viewers to share these videos with friends and send in your responses. If you would like to obtain Birkon Nusach Eretz Yisrael or invite the rabbi for a speaking engagement, please email us at office@machonshilo.org.